Well, Bring Our Troops Home is, it's a good idea. Dan McKnight's the chair of Bring Our Troops Home. He says, it's time to defend the National Guard. He says there must be legislation that upholds the constitutional requirement that there has to be a declaration of war before the National Guard can be deployed to wars overseas. He said that's the way it's supposed to work, says it doesn't work that way currently, and he'd like to see that change as soon as possible. Dan, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity.
Greatly appreciate you being here. All right, so lay it out for me here. What are the requirements? What are the guidelines? What are the constitutional, boxes that have to be checked for a National Guard unit of any sort to be deployed anywhere outside the borders of their state or this country?
No, it should be with a declaration of war. They can leave the country for any purpose that's legally authorized. But what those purposes are, the National Guard exists to repel an invasion, to put down an insurrection, and to enforce the laws of the Union. And that's it. That's identified in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 of the Constitution. But for 80 years, Congress hasn't declared war. They've abdicated that responsibility and given the authority to the executive to make that decision whether to go to war, and then they just agree to write the check for any length of time, for any place in the world, for any amount of money. And what it's supposed to do, Title 10 of the United States Code is the permissions that the president or Congress have to call forth the militia for federal service. And it's very delineated. It's very clear. Natural disasters, state of emergency, defense of the homeland, enforcement of federal laws. It doesn't have any clause in there for sending the National Guard outside of the continental United States for the purposes of undeclared war, nation building, police actions, peacekeeping. None of those things exist. And so we want the states to exert their control and interpose between the federal government and their overreaching authority and their own militia. And that's what the Defend the Guard bill does. It simply says that absent a declaration of war from Congress, the governors of the states shall stop the National Guard from being called into federal service for the purpose of overseas war.
But they don't. I mean, so you're saying to me, and I assume this to be true, the last time we declared war, actually had a declaration of war, was World War II.
That's correct. 1942 against Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. But since then, we fought Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq 1, 2, and 3, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria. I can go on for hours. There's 77 conflicts that I could name if I had a piece of paper and put down wars that the National Guards participated in. And the most recent egregious example, in 2013, President Obama went to Congress and asked for permission, authorization, a declaration of war to go into war in Syria. And Congress said no. But guess what he did? He went anyway. And at the beginning of that war, 3% of the boots on the ground were from the National Guard. And when the al-Assad regime fell in December, 58% of the boots on the ground were from the National Guard. They've become the easy button for an out-of-control foreign policy. And guess what? After we found out about the al-Assad regime falling, the Department of Defense came out and said, we've been lying all along. There's not actually 900 U.S. troops in Syria. There's over 2,000, and there might be even more.
Yeah, I saw that.
So we've got to have the states exert this control.
Yeah, so you've got troops, and that's just one place that they're deployed currently. National Guard units are deployed all over the world, pretty much routinely, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. There's almost 100 nations right now where the National Guard has a member of their state National Guard deployed currently.
100 countries. 100 countries. Oh my 100. Lord, go ahead.
And there's 17 countries in the year 2024 where the National Guard engaged in war or warlike activities. Well, let's define what a warlike activity is. If you've had a bullet snap over your head and you've heard that pop and whiz, you know what war is. But Congress has abdicated that responsibility for too long. And we try to fight this in Washington, D.C. We're a bunch of veterans. We're all from the global war on terror. And we went to Washington, D.C. in 2019, and we took 100 of our friends and tried to make our case to our congressmen and senators and ask them what conditions on the ground need to be met for us to come home from Afghanistan. And all of them were very polite. They all took pictures with us, and we support the troops and all the other mantras. And only one congressperson was honest. Representative Liz Cheney. She looked us dead in the eye and she said, as long as I'm here in Washington, D.C., you will never come home from Afghanistan. And so we went back to Wyoming, first of all, and defeated her. And then we went to the states and decided to work on this Defend the Guard legislation and have the states exert their ultimate flex on the federal government and keep control of their own militia.
Well, why would she say you'd never come home? Is it that important to her?
Well, I think we all know the answer to that. Liz Cheney is the daughter of a war profiteering fortune. Yeah, she's the apple of her daddy's eye, and she has never seen a war that she didn't want to fight or have somebody else fight on her behalf.
Yeah. Are you making ground here? Are we getting somewhere, Dan? Can we? The new administration, obviously, and I'm watching a lot of crazy things happen. U.S. aid, by the way, which people would think was U.S. aid to America. It's not. It's United States Agency for International Development. It got tossed in the wood chipper. That's the way Elon Musk put it over the weekend. Because all this money we're squandering in 100 different nations for God only knows what, and the corruption that goes with that, and the corruption that goes with what you just said, deploying National Guard units and this and that. I mean, it's money and it's power and it's war and it's, they love when bullets get shot and grenades get detonated, because then they got to buy more bullets and more grenades, right? And it's money, 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 isn't it?
It's good for business, that's for sure. And yes, that we are making progress to answer that question. In over 30 states, we have Defend the Guard legislation on the table in one form or another that's being moved through their process. Last year in the Arizona Senate, it passed with a unanimous Republican support. It passed the Idaho Senate last year with a bipartisan support. It passed the largest legislative body in the Western Hemisphere, the New Hampshire House of Representatives, last year. Currently, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has endorsed the bill and supports the concept, and he is speaking our language. RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard are both about to be confirmed. They have endorsed and supported this legislation. J.D. Vance, Donald Trump are talking about ending these stupid wars because they're not in our own interest. And we've had major legislative victories already this year. Last week, we had 3, one in South Dakota, one in Wyoming, and one in Virginia. In Virginia, it passed the committee unanimously. We are making progress. It's going to happen.
So Virginia, hold on, just so I'm clear on this. Virginia is a state that is a Democratic majority in both houses, right?
I believe so. But Nick Freitas,
so, right.
Representative from Virginia, took it to committee, and it took him 52 seconds to make his presentation. And the committee bought it, and they voted unanimously to send it to the floor.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens there. I wish you well, because I think you're on the right path here. Look. We need to return to constitutional government, Dan. That's what we need here, and I think that we're on the track to doing that. And we've got to stop squandering American money and treasure on every little thing that gets some congressman a little bit of money to his district, and on and on and on. We can talk about this for the next few hours. You come back, though. You give me an update. I appreciate you coming in and explaining this. It's great. We need to know more about it, and I want to know how successful you are going forward, sir. Thank you.
You bet. We'll be back. Thank you so much, Steve.
Greatly appreciate it. Dan McKnight, he is the chairman of Bring Our Troops Home. You can't just send the National Guard without a declaration of war. Well, they do it routinely. 77 times, he said. 77 times. Wow. Talk about disregard for the law, flaunting the Constitution, and just saying we'll do whatever the hell we want. Well, that needs to stop. We voted for a new day in America, and that needs to stop. All right, when we come back, I'm going to talk about this USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. Because Elon Musk said he could have gone and had a lot of fun over the weekend, but instead he spent his weekend putting this through the wood chipper. How much money? Oh, it's remarkable. I'll be back after this.